All right, so I made a video a while back that was talking about how Joe Biden was trying to increase our already completely ridiculous military budget that we have here in the United States. I mean, we actually have a system where not only do we have a for-profit military industrial complex with private weapons manufacturers who get contracts from the government for billions and billions of dollars to make our weapons that our government then takes and goes and sells to authoritarians in the Middle East or uses ourselves against innocent men, women, and children all over the world. And so it's a completely ridiculous system that, on top of those facts of where our money is going, where the profit incentives actually are, on top of that, the Pentagon can't even pass an audit, right? So this is one of our biggest, most bloated government agencies. The military budget takes up a majority of our discretionary budget, and yet they can't even tell us what they're spending this money on as they continue to ask for more money. And unfortunately, given the fact that we have a bipartisan consensus in our government to obey whatever the military industrial complex wants, we get situations like this. So a huge outrage. Senate panel approves $25 billion Pentagon budget increase. So an increase on top of the already increase that Joe Biden put forward earlier this year. So let's go ahead and read some of the details on this. So narrowly controlled by Democrats and chaired by hawkish Senator Jack Reed, a Democrat from Rhode Island, the Senate panel voted 23-3 to approve a $740 billion Pentagon budget for fiscal year 2022. The proposed Defense Department outlay is part of the sprawling National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which, if the Senate Armed Service Committee gets its way, will include $778 billion in military spending for the fiscal year. Because of its role in setting defense policy, which determines subsidies and other rewards to private industry, the Senate Armed Services Committee is awash in cash from military contractors, and according to Open Secrets, Reed's top contributors during the 2020 campaign cycle included Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics, two of the leading beneficiaries of federal contracts. So exactly what I just said. We have a system here in the United States where war is our biggest industry, right? This is where we make the primary amount of our money from, is by exploiting the resources, the labor markets of countries around the world. And we do this by force, whether it's economically with sanctions, or whether it's militarily with actual boots on the ground, or with covert operations, or with the funding of other groups and paramilitary groups on the ground who are doing our bidding. So, and meanwhile, we have politicians like Jack Reed, as they just pointed out, who are taking bribes from those gigantic weapons manufacturers who profit from endless wars, and they take those bribes and then they go and they sit on these committees that then get to decide the Pentagon budget and decide to continue handing out infinite sums of money to those weapons contractors. So it's really just a racket. There's obviously that common phrase, war is a racket, and it's a common phrase for a reason, because it is. War is profitable, and again, that's our biggest industry here in the United States, and it seems like they're just continuing this continued pattern of increasing and increasing the military budget indefinitely. There's no end to it, and yet again, they can't even prove what they're spending this money on. So they continue on here with a statement from Wiseman. So he says, and from Public Citizen, so he says, when the coronavirus has demonstrated that all the guns in the world can't protect our national security, when the U.S. spends more on its military than the next 11 nations combined, which is in and of itself should be evidence of how ridiculous this is, when we are withdrawing from Afghanistan and therefore reducing required military expenditures, when the Pentagon can't pass an audit, like I said, when the Pentagon continues to lavish funds on the F-35s, which is 10 years behind schedule, double the original price, and plagued by performance issues like, the engines won't work, kind of a problem. What possible justification is there for increasing the Pentagon budget over and above the increase already requested by the Biden administration? So all good points and all good questions there. And as they point out, apropos nothing, $25 billion is also the same amount it would take to vaccinate the entire world from COVID-19. So this is our priority here in the United States with where we want to direct our spending, our money, our investments, and it's in really the worst possible places you could imagine. It's in our war industry. Instead of spending that $25 billion that could have gone to producing vaccines for the rest of the world, which is an investment that would actually pay for itself. I mean, not only economically, because you would be helping the world recover economically as a whole, meaning you would help U.S. interests economically as a whole, not only economically, but also politically and diplomatically. I mean, imagine if we had a situation where instead of other countries seeing bombs dropped with American flags painted on the side of them, imagine if they saw crates full of vaccines being dropped with American flags painted on the side of them. I think that might be go a long way instead of actually just obliterating villages and stuff across the Middle East and across Africa, in actually investing in people and helping people and actually doing things along a humanitarian ground other than just enforcing our will economically or militarily. I think that would be a better situation all around, and yet These are where the priorities are. So listen, I mean, again, this is all just a racket. We have all of these politicians within the Democratic and Republican Party who are serving the interests of the military-industrial complex. Joe Biden himself, who was a long Senate career, as well as under the Obama administration and currently as an imperialist and doing these things that have led to some of the worst, most catastrophic decisions in modern U.S. history, like the Iraq War, which Joe Biden fervently supported and argued in favor of. But in addition to that, look who he's filling his cabinet with. I mean, he literally picked as the head of the Pentagon for his administration somebody who is a board member from on Raytheon. So you have a board member from one of these private weapons contractors who profit from endless war, and he's in charge of making the top decisions at the Pentagon. I mean, it's just the corruption is so out in the open. It's so brazen. And honestly, $25 billion here, $25 billion there, it doesn't really make that much of a big of a difference in terms of the budget, right? I mean, it's not, we're already spending, like they said, more than the next 11 countries combined. Another statistic that really blows all of this away in terms of like how ridiculous our proportionate spending is we have over 800 military bases around the world. 800 military bases around the world. The rest of the world combined has roughly 70. Okay, China, who's supposed to be this like big bad competitor of the United States right now militarily, and we're supposed to be scared of them, they have like 3 military bases. We have like 400 military bases surrounding China. So it's just a completely ridiculous situation, but yet they continue to justify this endless spending. And again, it's not necessarily about how much we're spending in total or the budget itself, because they can't even tell us what they're spending or where they're spending it. But it's more about the comparisons that they draw there. $25 billion might not seem like a lot to these people who are adding to the military budget, but that's $25 billion that they are telling us that we can't spend to eradicate homelessness, that we can't spend to invest in healthcare or education. That's $25 billion that they're telling us that we can't spend to, like they said, vaccinate the entire world. I mean, our priorities in this country are so backwards and twisted and disgusting. And this is just another story that proves that our government does not represent the interests of the American people, is not seeking to promote peace and freedom around the world, but is instead serving the interests of war in this country, the endless warfare that our government and our empire continues to profit from.